Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're making a chicken taco soup. Now this is a perfect pantry meal. It's a great one-pot meal for weeknights when you're in a hurry. And it's also a really good camping meal. And it's one of those meals that you should have in your pantry for when the power goes out so you can still eat. And I cannot tell you how important that is. After what we all went through 5 years ago with empty grocery store shelves, and I have been working up in Mountain City helping to rebuild homes that were destroyed after Helene, and the stories and the struggles that people had. It is so important that we have meals like this that we can put together when we have to have something and we maybe don't have refrigeration, or we're cooking on a camp stove and we got just one pot. So kind of get a list of these meals together and stock your pantry for them. But anyway, this is super easy. All we're going to do is dump a whole bunch of cans in our pot and then let it simmer for a few minutes. We're using chicken in this. You could use beef, and you can also substitute leftover chicken. If you've got some baked chicken or a roast, one of the deli roasted chickens, you can put some of that in here, a cup or two. And you have a lot of protein in the beans, so you don't have to do a lot of chicken. But anyway, I'm going to use a whole bunch of different kind of beans. If there's a bean you don't like, don't put it in here. I'm doing a black bean, a kidney bean, and a pinto bean, and a can of corn, because it just adds a lot of texture and flavor to it. A can of petite diced tomatoes. You could use the Rotel with the chilies in them if you want to. And you need some kind of sauce, tomato sauce. You can use like the enchilada sauce, red, green, whatever. Or you can just use regular tomato sauce if you don't have enchilada sauce. You need some flavoring in it. A packet of taco seasoning will do it, and it'll also help thicken it. If you don't have that though, you can use regular chili powder. You can put some chicken broth in it if you want to, or you can add some bouillon cubes, or some of this better than bouillon. And then I've got some garnish options, a lime, some shredded cheese, and some corn chips here. You could make cornbread to go with it though, if you're making it and you're not like having to make it without power. I'm just using 1 can of chicken. If I was making it for a big crowd for dinner, for lunch, I would probably do 2. And if I was using leftover chicken or the roasted chicken, I would do maybe 3 cups of shredded chicken. And like I said, we're just going to dump everything in there. And I'm not draining anything because I'm making this the way that you would make it if you were pulling it out of your pantry, or maybe if you were camping, because you don't always take a lot of extra stuff with you when you're camping. You just take what you need to prepare whatever meals you're going to prepare. You want to kind of bust up the chunks of your chicken so that it's in fairly fine pieces, especially if you're only using 1 can, because you do want it dispersed evenly through the soup, so everybody at least can see a little bit of it. And you can see 1 can is not a lot of chicken. I'm packing this up, and I'm going to take it with me and heat it up and eat it while I'm up there working this week. I've been eating way too much fast food, which just don't make you feel good. So this will be a welcome change. Okay, now we're going to get the rest of our stuff in here. Heat this on about medium or medium high. And then if you got time, turn it down and let it simmer for 20 minutes or so. And that just kind of lets the flavors all get meshed together. If you've got leftover beans that you cooked, dried beans that you cooked, this is a good way to use up your leftover beans. Most soups and casseroles are use what you got recipes, and folks get way too carried away with trying to make stuff like that exact. My granny used to say all you need to fix a meal is a pot and some heat, and you can throw stuff in there till you get enough to feed everybody. And that's kind of what soups and casseroles are. It's throwing what you got in a pot. Use your leftovers for soups and casseroles. Do y'all like these can openers that go around the edge? Because I don't. I use the other kind for forever. I'm kind of figuring out how to use them now, though. It took me a little while to figure out how to use it. I know how millennials feel when they try to open a can and they never have. because this took me a minute. It works different than the kind I use my whole life. Go ahead and put my taco seasoning in there. And I'm going to wait just a minute to add in my can of corn. I think it makes canned corn tough if you cook it too long. If you are concerned about salt, you might want to drain all this stuff because it all has salt in it. And do not add any more salt to it if you don't drain it. You'll be having to put a tater in it to get some of the salt out. And if you do over salt soup, you can throw a potato in it, a whole potato, and cook it, and it will absorb some of the salt in your soup. I don't think I'm going to add any bouillon to mine of any kind or any kind of chicken broth because that would add more salt into it and it would be too much salt. And you can see here it's plenty soupy enough. I sure don't need to add any more liquid to it. If I add any more liquid to it, it's going to be downright watery, and I don't like soup that's downright watery. If you want to, though, you can add chicken broth in here. I would probably recommend the low sodium. And if you do bouillon, do it very sparingly because of the salt. Probably won't need that, but we'll taste it. And this can of corn here is also going to add a little bit more liquid in it too. And I said I was making this, you know, the way you would make it if maybe you were camping or if you had a storm and the power was out and you were pulling stuff out of your pantry. All of these vegetables are packed in water, but they also have salt in them. But they have the flavor of the vegetables in them. And if you're in a situation where you're using what you've got, you don't want to throw away that flavor. So I use the liquid that's in the can. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but I grew up in a time when you didn't throw anything away. I mean, like, I haul bags of trash out. When I grew up, there was probably one regular kitchen size bag of trash that left my granny's house a week, maybe even in 2 or 3 weeks, probably more 2 or 3 weeks. They had a burn barrel and they burned what little bit they threw away. All the leftover food was recycled, which there wasn't much, but scraps like peels were used. They were either fed to animals or they were used in gardens. And anything, any kind of container that was usable, they would have certainly loved one of these can openers because if they opened a can, they would have used it for something else, and they did. And these do leave a better edge. But they canned everything in glass jars, which were washed and reused. So there wasn't trash thrown out. And the less we waste, I think the more we have. And we're kind of living in this endless cycle of wasting. So if you've never tried making soup with the liquid in the cans, try it. It's not bad, and it's certainly better than like canned soup where you just open it. But if you've got fresh stuff, you know, it's garden season, or like I said, you've got leftover dried beans, use those in this. But this is just a quick meal. You can have this on the table in, well, if you simmer it 20 minutes, you can have it on the table in 25 minutes because there's no prep to it. Okay, our soup is starting to simmer now, so I guess I'm going to go ahead and add my corn in there. It's been simmering for a few minutes, and we'll let that corn get good and hot and simmer just a little bit and get the flavor of it in there too. And if you cover it, it will cook a little bit faster even, so you can get it on the table a little bit quicker on a weeknight when you've got 500 things to do and homework and ball games and all that fun stuff. And if you are cooking on a camp stove, you're definitely going to want to cover it because everything takes longer on a camp stove just because of the size of the burner and if you're outside and stuff like that. And of course, in an emergency situation, you don't want to waste any fuel, so cover it, cook it quicker. Now, while our soup is simmering there a little bit, we can get the rest of dinner together. A pan of cornbread. If you're just making the soup for dinner and it's not just doing it on a weeknight maybe, because cornbread will cook in about the same amount of time that you're going to simmer your soup. And this is excellent with cornbread. A little bit of cheese to throw on top of it when you put it in the bowl. Don't add it in the pot because they'll add less if you put it in the bowl. And times are kind of tough. Now, citrus is an excellent source of flavor. It totally changes the flavor. It boosts the flavor. When my kids were growing up, you could get lemons and limes for around a dime a piece when they were in season. Now they're around 25 cents, which, like, I think that's what I paid for these. And there's a couple grocery stores in town that have lemons and limes for around 25 cents a piece right now. When my kids were growing up, I didn't have that extra dime. So I am just now learning how much I love citrus on food to add flavor to it. If you're making them cardboard fish sticks for the kids, squeeze a little lemon juice over the top of them. It greatly improves them. But a lime on tacos, burritos, any kind of Mexican food, a lime really, it meshes nicely. The hot and the citrus together is just wonderful. So if you've got that extra quarter, go ahead and get a few limes and cut them up in wedges and serve that. Just sit it on the side with a little cheese in a bowl and let folks squeeze that over top of their soup. It is amazing the flavor that it adds. And with those peppers, it's just incredible. You do want to make sure you wash all your citrus really good, because all of our fruit is coated now and you don't want to eat that coating, and who knows what it's coated with. But make sure you wash it really good. Little hot water running in the sink and then dry it off, and it cleans it off pretty good. This is super simple, super quick. Let the kids make it. And if you've got leftover chicken or a deli chicken, certainly you can substitute that in here. And it's a little bit cheaper than the canned chicken. Watch for the sales on that canned chicken though, because you can get it fairly reasonable and you can stock it, and it is good for when the power is out. You know, it doesn't have to be refrigerated. And it's also good for when you just hadn't had time to get to the grocery store. Wintertime when it snows and you can't get to the grocery store. But it is loaded with protein because of all the beans. So you don't need a whole lot of the chicken in it. Just enough to add a little flavor to it. And you can use beef in this if you want to. Maybe you got some ground beef on sale and you cooked up a pretty good sized batch of it and you've got a little ground beef. You can throw that in here. Top it with a little cheese. Serve it with a few corn chips. Take you a wedge of lime and squeeze over it, if you've got it. Of course, if you're trapped by a storm, you probably won't have a fresh lime, but try lime with stuff with peppers in it. It's wonderful. Make it all year long, because even in the summertime, it's not going to heat up the kitchen, and you can have a quick meal and then go sit out and enjoy the breeze on the porch. Before we go, I want to leave you with Ephesians 4:32. And be ye kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. That is one of the many verses that the Golden Rule is based on. And we used to teach that in school, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. For some reason, they've stopped. And I hope they get back to that. It seems like there's kind of a movement in that direction. But as Christians, we are supposed to be kind and tender-hearted and forgive. And in doing that, we treat other people the way we want to be treated, not necessarily the way we are always treated. And that is one of the very hardest things to do as a Christian, but that is what separates Christians from those who don't believe, because once we have been forgiven by God for Christ's sake, then we forgive. And we can be kind and tender-hearted and show God's love because He has shown us His love. I want to thank you so very much for joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen. I hope you all enjoy a big bowl of chicken taco soup and you have your family around you to share it with. If you haven't already, please don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave. And until next time, remember to put God first.